So we're out here today up at the property, and I was just having a look over the old brigadier here. The one fan belt was slipping on it, so I was gonna tighten that up, but I figured I'd make a video on it while I had the hood open and everything and go over the two old trucks. So this one is powered by a 3208 Cat. Originally, I thought it was the natural one without the turbo, but it turns out it does have the turbo. Barely see it back in there behind the air cleaner, but it is in there. But yeah, when you're using it to move the dirt around and when loaded on the trailer to bring it here, the belts were slipping every time the compressor would kick in, and they're not super loose. They're looser than they should be, but so have to get them tightened up. But I figured while the hood was open, we'd do this. So it's a 3208 Cat with the turbo. And then behind it is a 6613. So it's 13 speed, the old style 13 speed, non-overdrive. There's the shift pattern on it. And yeah. And then as you can see, so I was off a little bit, it's 183,000 kilometers. Not entirely sure what that equates to in miles, but you just take that and times it by 1.6, or yeah, divide it by 1.6, that gives you the miles. But yeah, she's super clean inside, needs swept out and stuff, but the only thing wrong with the interior is the glue let go on the headliner. The headliner fell off the foam. The vinyl part of it is still in here. I just got to glue it back on at one point, but that's the inside of it. So basically, my great uncle used to have a construction company before he passed away, and he wanted his own brand new truck. So they bought him this truck, and this was his truck. Nobody else drove it, only him. And apparently it didn't get driven a whole lot, but this was his truck and nobody else drove it, and that's why it's still in such good shape. Especially for up here in the Salt Belt in Ontario. But yeah, there's a little tiny bit of rust that's just started in the frame, but compared to everything else around here that from this vintage, cannot complain. The only real cosmetic things with it, I don't know, you should be able to see that on the hood there, the paint's starting to peel a little bit. And this fender on the passenger side doesn't really line up right. Now, I'm not entirely sure the sequence of events that caused it, but basically, a car cut him off, and he hit the car, spun the car around into the ditch, I guess, and at some point in that kerfuffle, it bent the front bumper and broke the fiberglass fender off the side of the hood, and then when the body shop put the fender back on, they either didn't get the fender on there 100% or whatever the case is. That's why the fender kind of droops down a little bit. I just haven't had a chance to look into it yet. Should be able to tell that. Lean down a little bit. I don't know if the top's got to go in, the bottom's got to come out, whatever the case is, but that's on the to-do list. And then they couldn't find the original muffler for it, apparently, and my cousin had to change the muffler on it the last time he safetied it. So the muffler didn't line up with the stack, so they just stuck that on there. So I'm going to have to get that figured out, because you're not going to have a nice chrome stack without it being hooked up. Which apparently was one of the options this truck had, was the chrome stack, the dual air horns on the roof, and then the chrome front bumper was another option. So I'm sure there was way more options than that, but that was just what Uncle Douglas wanted, so that's what he got. Now this truck, this is the old C65. It was the workhorse of the fleet, so it just got kind of treated as such. But this one, it's a 427 gas engine with a 5-speed direct main and then a 4-speed overdrive auxiliary. And that's actually the funny thing with the old overdrive transmissions is whether it be the main or the auxiliary, the top 2 gears were reversed. So basically, if this was a direct, that would be all the way over towards the passenger, and forward would be high gear, or sorry, that would be 3rd gear. But since this is the overdrive, all the way over towards the passenger and forward is overdrive. But when I got it, none of the gauges worked, so we made this, not entirely sure if you'd call it custom or what you want to call it, and got gauges in it. They all work. The tachometer is not very responsive when you rev it up, but for what I paid for them off of Amazon, can't really complain too much. I think the 2 gauges were just over $100. So, but yeah, the dash did the typical thing, and it's all cracked and whatever else. But this one's more of a restoration in progress than anything. But we'll get her one day. Grab my water jug out of here before I forget it for the 15th time. But if you watched the last video Cole put out, we ended up bending the other side on the dump box. And as you can see, just about every post on this poor thing's rusted out. It got little holes wore through from the inside out into these posts from the dirt sliding in and out. Obviously, it just wears away the steel. And whoever built this dump box, I have no idea if this is a homemade thing or if it's a factory built thing or what it is. It doesn't look factory to me, but then at the same time, there's a million people used to make dump boxes. But underneath, these posts should have a hole drilled through so that all this dirt and whatever else can fall down through, which they don't. So there's the result. And as you can see, this poor old post is pretty well rotted right out. That's why I don't know if it's even possible to fix this, or if it's just to find another box for it. I was also thinking it'd be cool to put a 5th wheel on it and get rid of the dump box, but at the same time, that kind of takes away its history. But yeah, I kind of just tacked that half-ass patch on there. He's going to weld it all in, and I started doing this side, but a lot of things I started that I never got done because everything was just kind of a last-minute thing, having to move. And then the backstory on this one is it was originally spec'd out to be a log truck. Now I'm told that's why it ended up with the auxiliary transmission, because most trucks that were spec'd as dump trucks would have had 2-speed rear ends, so they would have been a 5-speed and then the 2-speed rear ends. That's most of the logging guys, or the guys that pulled heavy stuff with them, got the auxiliary transmission. So I don't know. I never seen any pictures or anything of it, of what the log rack looked like on it. But what I'm told is the front one or two bunks let go on the log rack. He was going down the road and the two logs slid forward and took the driver's side mirror right off the side of the cab, bent the door, bent the fender, and apparently, I don't know if there was an accident involved or if he was just going down the road. I've never gotten the whole story on that. That's all I've gotten is the story. And apparently it scared the guy that owned the truck so bad he just quit driving trucks. So he sold it to my Uncle Douglas when it was, I think it was like 2-3 years old at the time. So and then my dad used to drive this truck, and they were building a road through a swamp, much like we did for my driveway here. But apparently, either whatever they were using for a base, or the base wasn't put in yet and they thought it'd be solid enough. Whatever the case was, the passenger side just sunk off the edge of the road, and the truck ended up on its side. And believe it or not, when it landed, this is still the same door and the same mirror. The ground was so soft that it didn't even bend the mirror arm or break the glass in the mirror. They just stood the truck back up and wiped the mirror off. The only thing that it did was there must have been a stump or something here, because it pushed this fender all in and broke the signal light that was on there. So I'd straighten this fender mostly back out. I don't know if you can see it. The sun's kind of screwing with me here. Should be able to at least see the wrinkles in it. But yeah, it pushed the fender all in. I straightened all that back out. But that would have been a bit of a scary situation for them. But they just shoveled the truck out and they stood it back up. I'm pretty sure they actually used the dyno to stand this back up, because the dyno came from the same place when it was still working. But yeah, this one needs, the old C65 would need a lot of attention to put it back on the road, which I don't think I'm ever gonna put this one back on the road. Ideally, someday it'd be nice to get it fixed up enough to take to truck shows and stuff, but spending money on old dump trucks right now isn't really a great place to spend it, considering everything else I got to get done. And another cool thing about the old Brigadier here, so if you can see that, there used to be a company in Peterborough, Manly Dump Boxes, and they're actually the ones that built the dump box for this. I think he is still in business. I think he's downsized quite a bit. I know he sold the company, but then he bought the company back because the people that he sold it to started building a bad product and he didn't want his name on it. So he told them they either changed the name or sold it back to him. But that's pretty cool. At some point too, they took the tailgate off and they got a welder to fix up a bunch of cracks in it and everything. That's why the tailgate's primed and the box isn't. So far, the only two things that I found on this old truck that don't still work is there's a problem with the signal lights, which I think is just the flasher, and one of these two corner marker lights on the dump box doesn't work, which really isn't that big of a deal. They're incandescent, so they're more than likely just the bulbs got water on them and blown, or worst case, the light just doesn't work anymore and I got to replace it. But yeah, so there's those. Any more questions, just ask me and I'll do my best to either answer them or find out the answers for you. Somebody's built that little chain rack in there. Not 100% sure what that was put there for, but it was definitely put there with a purpose, so that's kind of cool. That's what I like most about all this old stuff, is seeing the history behind it and what people had to do to get ingenuitive enough to get the job done. Everybody now they seem to just go out and want to buy accessories and everything, and nobody really has to think and figure stuff out anymore. But that's just my 2 cents. And the other funny thing is that box is sitting up like that. I don't think it's went down an inch in 2 or 3 weeks since we've used it, which is crazy that that box was put on there in 88 and the seals and the hoist are still that good, and the pump and everything else. But the old C65, she don't hold up that. It'll stay up for about a week or so, and then it just seeps back down. But I think the only option the C65 got, other than the auxiliary transmission, is the single chrome horns on there. Well, the single set, I guess. And it's just the steel bumper, and that's the only chrome on the poor old thing. But we'll get her fixed up one day. Everything's a work in progress. So yeah, any more questions, feel free to ask, and thanks for watching.